Friends and viewers, White Nights, short story written by Fyodor Dostoyevsky, originally published in 1848, early in the writer's career. Like many of Dostoevsky's stories, White Nights is told in the first person by a nameless narrator. The narrator is a young man living in St. Petersburg who suffers from loneliness. He gets to know and falls in love with a young woman, but the love remains unrequited as the woman misses her lover with whom she is finally reunited. So, the first night, the narrator describes the hero or the protagonist of this short story, describe his experience walking in the streets of St. Petersburg. He loves the city at night and feels comfortable in it because all the people he is used to seeing are not there. He no longer feels comfortable during the day. He drew his emotions from them. If they were happy, he was happy. If they were despondent, he was despondent. New faces made him feel alone. As he walked, the houses would talk to him and tell him how they were being renovated or painted a new color or torn down. He lives alone in a small apartment in St. Petersburg with only his old and unsociable maid, Matriona, to keep him company. He tells the story of his relationship with a young woman, Nastinka. A Nastinka, he first sees her standing against the railing and crying. He becomes concerned and considers asking her what is wrong, but eventually he continues walking. There is something special about her, and he is very curious. When he hears her scream, he intervenes and saves her from a man who is harassing her. The young woman holds his hand and he explains that he is alone, that he's never known a woman, and that he feels timid with her. Nastinka reassures him that ladies like timidity and that she likes it too. He tells her that he spends every minute of every day dreaming about a girl who would say two words to him, who will not repulse him or ridicule him as he approached. He says that he thinks of talking to a random girl timidly, respectfully, passionately, telling her that he is dying in solitude and that he has no chance of success. With her, he tells her that it is a girl's duty not to rudely reject or mock a man as timid and luckless as he. As they reach Nastinka's door, he asks if he will ever see her again. Before she can answer, he adds that he will be at the spot they meet tomorrow anyway, just so he can relive this one happy moment in his lonely life. She agrees, stating she can't forbid him not to come and she has to be there anyway. The girl would tell him her story and be with him, provided that talking does not lead to romance. She is as lonely as the narrator. So the second night of this White Nights, on their second meeting, Nastinka seeks to find out more about him. He tells her that he has no history because he has spent his life utterly alone. When she presses him to continue, he suggests that he is of type of the dreamer. The dreamer, he explained, is not a human being, but a creature of an intermediate sort. He gives a long speech in a style that anticipates that of an underground man, like one of his short story Notes from Underground. about his longing for companionship, leading Nastinka to comment, "You talk as if you are reading from a book." He begins to tell his story in the third person, calling himself the hero. This hero is happy at the hour when all work ends and people walk about. He references Vasily Zhukovsky and mentions the goddess of fancy. He dreams of everything from befriending poets to having a place in the winter with a girl by his side. He says that the dreariness of everyday life kills people, while in his dream he can make his life as he wishes it to be. At the end of his moving speech, Nastinka sympathetically assures him that she will be his friend. Nastinka's history. Now let me tell you about Nastinka. Nastinka tells this narrator her story. She grew up with a strict and blind grandmother who gave Nastinka a largely sheltered upbringing. Nastinka's grandmother uses a safety pin to keep two joints at the hip, as she fears her grandmother will get into mischief. Her grandmother pension being too small, and they rent a room in their house. When their first lodger dies, the grandmother rents to a younger man, despite embarrassing herself in front of him by revealing that she is literally and figuratively pinned to her grandmother. The young man begins a silent courtship with Nastinka, giving her books so that she may develop a reading habit. She takes a liking to the novels of Sir Walter Scott and Alexander Pushkin. The young man invites Nastinka and her grandmother to a performance of The Barber of Seville on the night that young lodger is about to leave Petersburg for Moscow. Nastinka urges him to marry her. He refuses immediately marriage and claims that he does not have money to support them, but assures her that he will return for her a year later. Nastinka finishes her story and notes that a year has gone and he has not sent her a single letter. Third night, the narrator gradually realizes that despite his assurance that their friendship will remain platonic, he has inevitably fallen in love with her. He nevertheless helps her by writing and posting a letter to her lover, and he conceals his feeling for her. They await his reply to the letter of his appearance, but Nastinka grows restless in the other man's absence and takes comfort in the narrator's friendship. Unaware of the depth of the narrator's feeling for her, she tells him she loves him because he hasn't fallen in love with her. The narrator, despairing of his unrequited love, notes that he has now begun to feel alienation from her as well. Fourth night, Nastinka despairs because she knows that her lover is in Petersburg but hasn't contacted her. The narrator continues to comfort her, for which she is extremely grateful, leading him to break his resolve and confess his love for her. Nastinka is disoriented at first, and the narrator, realizing that they can no longer continue to be friends in the same manner. Instead, on never seeing her again, she urges him to stay and suggests that their relationship might become romantic someday, but that she wants his friendship in her life. The narrator becomes hopeful at this prospect. As they are walking, they pass by a young man who stops and calls after them. He turns out to be Nastinka's lover, and she jumps into his arm. She returns briefly to kiss the narrator, but journeys into the night, leaving him alone and broken-hearted. Morning, finally, what happened that a brief afterward about a letter he received from Nastinka in which she apologizes for hurting him and insists that she will always be thankful for his companionship. She says she will be married within a week and hopes that he will come. While reading the letter, the narrator breaks into tears. Matryona, his maid, interrupts his thought by telling him she has finished cleaning the cobwebs. The narrator notes that though he had never considered Matryona to be old, she looked far older than she ever had, and wondered if his own future is to be without companionship and love. He refuses to despair. So, this is the story of the White Knights by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. How the man, the hero, the protagonist of the novel, while every night he used to come out from his home and walks into the White Knights of Russia and St. Petersburg streets, encounter a girl, Nestinka. This is a very beautiful short story written by Fyodor Dostoyevsky. Thank you very much for patient listening.